Hello, everybody, and welcome. We're going to wait just about another 30 to 60 seconds as we see a lot of people logging into the platform. So hang tight. We're going to get started here in less than a minute. All right, let's go ahead and I'll go ahead and get us started. Thank you for being prompt, and thank you for everyone for joining us today. I know you probably have a busy day, busy week, busy life as usual. So we really appreciate you taking the time to join us for this webinar, PCQI 2.0. What's new? What do I need to know? I'd like to introduce our speakers here. We have first, sorry about that. We have Cynthia Weber, who is going to be our speaker, FSPCA Lead Instructor. Ms. Weber is a Lead Instructor for the Food Safety Preventive Controls Alliance, courses on both human and animal food. She also holds certifications as a Lead Auditor for GFSI schemes, including ISO 22000 and FSSC 22000. Her expertise extends to having been a registered SQF Trainer and Consultant, as well as an approved trainer for BRCGS. She has also continued to the development of training materials and compliance tools used globally in the food industry. Cynthia, I think you're kind of underselling yourself there. I think it's something like 20,000 people have taken courses that you have contributed to and be the lead instructor on through our Registrar Core platform. I'm aware of that. So I think it's a big achievement to contribute to development of training materials globally in the food industry. So thank you for that. Laura Dunn Nelson is our co-presenter with us. Laura has over 35 years of consulting experience in food safety management, quality control programs, and learning and development optimization. She has assisted companies in the successful implementation of good manufacturing practices, GMPs, quality assurance best practices, HACCP compliance, and food safety culture optimization. As a member of GFSI's Food Safety Culture Technical Working Group and chair of the People Subgroup, Laura helped draft the food safety culture guidelines set forth by GFSI. Laura has held positions as chair and vice chair of IAFP's Food Safety Culture Professional Development Group and a member of BSI PAS 320 Food Safety Culture Steering Group. Laura is currently board chair of IFPTI. So I think I've established here that we are in good hands as Cynthia and Laura take it from here. I'll come back at the end to help with Q&A. There's a note in the chat screen here saying that you can enter the chat questions at any point, but we're going to wait till the end of the webinar to address them and answer them. I'll let you take it away. Thank you very much.
Okay, you can go ahead on the next slide. So hello everyone and welcome. I'm glad you're joining us today as we take a look at the updated Preventive Controls Qualified Individual Training, commonly known as PCQI training, and what's new in version 2. And before we get into the details, here's a quick look at our agenda. We're going to start with some background on PCQI, including its purpose within the Preventive Controls rule. Next, we'll look at what has changed in PCQI version 2, and then move into next steps and resources, giving you some guidance on where to go from here, whether you're thinking of just updating your training, working on maintaining your system, or if you're just getting started as a PCQI. And then finally, like Dante said, we'll wrap up with some Q&A, so you'll have a chance to ask some questions. So let's go ahead and get started. We'll go to the next slide. To understand our audience today, I'd like to do a quick poll, and I'm wondering if you can answer the question, if you have completed a version 1 course, if you have completed a version 2 course, or if you're just brand new to PCQI training. So we'll give you a few minutes to answer the questions there. We'll give you a few seconds. Let's see if we see some answers. Okay, I see some answers coming in.
Looks like version 2 is going to be brand new to everyone, Cynthia.
Yes. So about 70% of you have taken version 1. So great, that's good to know. That helps us with our presentation today. Okay, well, let's go ahead and move on. So we can go to the next slide there. So we're still going to talk, we're going to touch on the background of PCQI. It sounds like a lot of you are familiar with version 1, but we'll do a quick refresher. Next slide. So the Food Safety Modernization Act was passed in 2011 and made up of 7 different rules, each targeting a different part of the food system. And today we're focusing on the preventive controls for human food rule, which applies to most manufacturers and food processors selling food in the US. And this is the rule that introduced the requirement for a preventive controls qualified individual, or PCQI. And the PCQI is responsible for overseeing key parts of the facility's food safety program, things like developing or reanalyzing the food safety plan, validating preventive controls, and ensuring records are reviewed and maintained. And because these responsibilities are so central to compliance, FDA expects PCQIs to be properly trained. And that's why this training and the updates that we are discussing today are so important. Next slide. Let's do a quick refresher on what a PCQI does within a facility. Most food handling, processing, or manufacturing organizations are required to have at least one PCQI, and in many cases they choose to have more than one. And we'll talk about why in a moment. But the PCQI is responsible for several key activities. The first is the preparation of the food safety plan, and this includes conducting the hazard analysis and determining which preventive controls are needed. And of course, a team can be used. It doesn't have to be just the PCQI. In fact, I think a team should be used, and they're going to get better results that way. But the PCQI is going to lead that team. And the responsibility for the plan falls on the PCQI once it's done. They are also responsible for validation of the preventive controls that are identified in the plan, ensuring that the controls are scientifically and practically effective. Another major responsibility is performing or overseeing records review, confirming that all the monitoring, corrective actions, and verification activities are completed and properly documented. And sometimes that's why you need more than one PCQI, because that can be, depending on how big your company is, there could be quite a bit of records to review, and there are timeframes that you have to complete that work within. And then finally, the PCQI oversees the reanalysis of the food safety plan, which must happen at least every 3 years or sooner if there's a significant change or if the plan is found to be ineffective. And because these responsibilities are ongoing, critical to the operation, critical to compliance, it's a good idea to designate a backup PCQI to ensure coverage during vacations, turnover, unexpected gaps, workload requirements, and just help maintain compliance. Next slide. We're going to talk about how someone actually becomes a preventive controls qualified individual. There's sometimes confusion around this, but under the preventive controls rule, a person must complete training that is at least equivalent to that received under a standardized curriculum. And that standardized curriculum is the one that has been FSPCA has developed, the FDA has approved, so that is the standardized curriculum. When someone completes an FSPCA course, this, we're using the FSPCA curriculum, then there's no real question about that whole equivalency, that at least equivalent to. It's the gold standard and the most widely accepted training option across the industry. And to make sure that you're signing up for a class that is using the FSPCA curriculum, make sure they offer the official FSPCA certificate upon completion. And that's the way to know that you are following, or you are getting the advantages of that approved standard curriculum. The rule also allows an individual to qualify through job experience. That does cause some confusion. The way that's defined is that the experience should have provided the knowledge equivalent to the standardized curriculum. So again, you're learning, it's not just experience with some food safety, it's experience with the preventive controls rule and that food safety plan. So experience has provided knowledge equivalent to the standardized curriculum, probably someone who's been deeply involved in the hazard analysis, the preventive controls, and the food safety plan management over time. And even when experience does qualify someone, we find that most companies still choose to send those individuals through the FSPCA training course to ensure consistency and to provide confidence that the food safety plan is developed in compliance with regulations. So there's a big benefit. Even if you've been experienced, you're getting the real specifics that the FDA is expecting out of your food safety plan. Next slide. Just want to highlight some of the benefits of PCQI training. It's valuable not just for meeting the regulatory requirements, but for really strengthening your entire food safety system. So first, the PCQI training really gives you the tools to lead your food safety team through hazard analysis. It's really critical that you understand what hazards FDA expects you to identify, and then what it expects you to do to implement preventive controls for those hazards. So in the course, you really learn how to approach those hazards systematically and to make science-based decisions about what needs to be controlled and what doesn't need to be controlled. It also helps you correctly identify food safety hazards, whether they're biological, chemical, physical, or radiological, and really creating the foundation of your effective food safety plan. Another benefit is really gaining the competence to build a compliant food safety plan. So again, understanding FDA thinking, what FDA is requiring, and the curriculum walks you through each required component. So you're not just building a food safety plan and kind of missing the target and not meeting those FDA regulations. You're designing a system that truly addresses those requirements and protects consumers and supports your operation. And then finally, this PCQI training helps you really understand what the FDA inspectors will be looking for. And that is because they are required to take this same training. They have to take the FSPCA standardized curriculum and get that same certificate as you do as a PCQI. So that means when they come into the facility, you're speaking the same language. You understand each other. You know what they're going to look for. It's not going to be a big surprise. You've had the same training that your inspector has had. So big benefit in my opinion there. Next slide. So many of you have taken version 1. So some of that was just a recap for you, but now I want to talk about version 2 because that seems to be new to most of our audience there. And I know a lot of people are asking, well, I took version 1, do I have to take version 2? There's no requirement to take version 2. So I want to talk about the benefits of taking version 2. Why would you want to take this separate course if you've already taken one? So one of the biggest advantages of completing the updated PCQI training is that it really helps to ensure you as a PCQI have current knowledge to keep your food safety plan up to date. I mentioned FDA's current thinking, and that's one of the ways that FSPCA talks about this course too, is we really looked at, we being the FSPCA, they say they have really looked at the FDA's current thinking and really evolved and helped evolve this training curriculum to address the current thinking. So it helps you stay aligned with their current thinking, including what inspectors are being trained on right now because they're taking this course. And it's incredibly valuable for PCQIs to understand the interpretations and emphasis areas that FDA is reinforcing, what they're inspecting for in addressing new concerns that we see arising in the food safety world. So it incorporates important updates from their recent guidance documents, many of which clarify how certain requirements should be applied in real-world situations. The updates address common pain points that we're all seeing within the industry, areas of confusion, and topics that the industry has been struggling with. So this version teaches students how to use those updated guidance documents, and I can't emphasize enough how valuable these are. It's the hazard guide and the appendix 1. They provide critical information, and it doesn't just hand you the information, it really teaches you how to access it, how to understand it, and how to apply it. So version 2 is designed to keep PCQIs aligned with today's regulatory world and regulatory expectations. So with that, I think Laura has a poll on the next page that she wants to ask.
Thanks, Cynthia. Great context for us today. So so happy to be here. Thank you. Yeah, we have a poll question. What challenges do you face as a preventative controls qualified individual? So we've got some choices. Select all that apply. Are you struggling with keeping up with regulations? Maybe gaining leadership commitment? Validation on doing the right things? Maybe that's some uncertainty there. Are you struggling with time and resources to manage your program? Or are you on the lucky side and have no challenges at all? You have the full support and knowledge you need. So let's see what the results are here. The anticipation, Cynthia.
I know, this will be interesting. Some of these, I guess, are going to show up.
Yeah, these are going to be weighted, which we appreciate.
We actually have some no challenges. A little bit showing up there.
Wow. So,
Okay.
not so much challenge. Well, got a few coming in here. Not so much on gaining leadership commitment. That one surprises me a little bit. But keeping up with regulations, Cynthia, that is such a challenge for us as they trickle out right here.
It is. And then knowing that you're doing the right things.
Yeah.
Doing the right
the
things.
validation that you're doing the right things. Yeah, it's a, yeah.
Okay.
Those are the top ones. And so hopefully you've given us a challenge to see if we can address some of those for you. And we have included some resources for you. And
great.
Hopefully some nuggets there. All right.
Yeah. And let's look at what's new in version 2 and how it might be able to help address those 2 specific trainings. We can't really help with management commitment or time, but it looked like the bigger ones were really keeping up to date and understanding if you're doing the right thing. So let's go ahead to the next slide. And one of the, I think, most valuable components of the new training is really the deep dive into FDA's draft guidance. And I think that's going to really help answer a couple of those concerns. What are the new requirements, or what is the requirements themselves haven't changed, but what's the FDA thinking? What's going on in the market? What do I have to address? And that hazard analysis and risk-based preventive controls, sorry, stuttering, for human food, the guidance for industry is so valuable. And a key part of this course is learning how to use the guide effectively. Students get hands-on practice with Appendix 1, which serves as a detailed hazard identification tool, helping you get to the correct hazards associated with your products and processes. It helps you evaluate hazards associated with your ingredients, the processing steps, and the finished products, and ensures that your hazard analysis will align with FDA expectations. The training also places a strong emphasis on the sources of potential hazards in a very organized manner. So I think you'll see a difference between version 1 and version 2 is the way it coaches you through thinking of all the different hazards, because they focus on understanding the sources of potential hazards, and they've broken those into practical categories like ingredient-related hazards, so contamination, cross-contact, inherent risks, process-related and facility-related hazards, so equipment design, environmental pathogens, process deviations, sources of foreign material, and then people-related hazards. These stem from employee practices, hygiene, cross-contamination risks. So really dividing those into different sources of contamination and then having structured approaches to look at the hazards associated with those more confidently. So this importance can be seen throughout what's happening. I mean, what's happening in the food industry currently really shows us why we need to do this. And Laura, I think you have some examples for us.
I do, Cynthia, and gosh, that hazard guide is so valuable. If we go to the next slide, what we wanted to do is kind of highlight, the reasons why, right, the FDA has this enhanced, we'll say, focus on hazards and risk. And it's because we're a little bit static on our views of our hazards and risk, and what we're finding is some of these organisms are being very opportunistic and creating issues for products that normally would not have those hazards. And we wanted to have a couple examples. One of them is By Heart infant formula. Many of you familiar with the prior infant formula we thought we'd overcome, but in this case, and this is this year a case that was experienced, we found that a hazard of Clostridium botulinum is a contaminant for this infant formula, powdered formula. And so what we found are the spores of CBOT that was contained in some of these lots. And really the call out here, Cynthia, is that the hazard itself, botulism, was formerly not seen as tied to this formula. So it was only through the infant illness surveillance did we find a link, which means that By Heart didn't realize that CBOT could be a hazard for their product. And I think that's, one of the call outs is, we need to be very vigilant for, in this case, low moisture foods, and that there are some rare hazards that can surface in these product vehicles. And so I think that's where we continually have to be vigilant and re-looking using the hazard guide that's provided in really do that due diligence that we need to be doing. If we go to the next slide, we just have another example of the moringa leaf powder. So in this case, this dietary supplement powder, we found Salmonella Richmond, and we can see 11 illnesses, 3 hospitalizations, and across multi-states, and all of them kind of pointing to this moringa powder product. And I know, Cynthia, that some companies are being very creative and trying to enhance the nutrition of their products, and maybe doing some new or boutique additions into their product. And I think that's where we need to be very careful in understanding that some of these supplements and novel ingredient powders may have some hidden risks that we hadn't already identified that could create issues. And so I think as your R&D teams are getting creative out there, this is where, as a PCQI professional, you would come in and really have those conversations to look at what additional risk and hazards some of these new additions could be creating for you. Next slide.
And that really ties into where we're going next. One of the things that the new curriculum really emphasizes, and that's what's going on with your supplier, what's going on with your ingredients, so that you can start identifying more. We'll see that recalls have really been escalating because of risks that are coming in the ingredients. And so one of the most important changes has been an increased emphasis on hazards that may originate at the supplier level. Now, even the version 1 approached, well, we have to identify what hazards are in the ingredients, but now we're looking beyond that. No, so now we really need to understand, what are they using? Are they using these novel products? Are there new or emerging risks? But we have an updated emphasis on not just the ingredient related hazards that we're already aware of, certain things have salmonella, but really looking at the supplier process related hazards and the supplier facility related hazards. So knowing what's going on at your supplier. So beyond, I'm buying this powder, they need to control for salmonella. You also need to know, well, they also handle peanuts, and so there's the potential cross-contamination of an allergen at that facility. Or they're using, blades in their process. There's the potential for metal hazards. You need to know what preventive controls they have, and know that those are effectively managed. Maybe you need to get their food safety plan and look at it. So the expanded focus really requires that PCQIs have a more in-depth understanding of their suppliers' facilities and processes, not just the specific ingredients. And this means that the PCQI needs to be able to evaluate the supplier programs more critically, ask better questions, and ensure that your supply chain controls are truly effective. So version 2 has much more emphasis on what's going on at the supplier. Again, not the ingredient related hazards, but then the process related hazards and the facility related hazards, which can even include, remember we mentioned that there's the people related sources. So what about the people at the facility? Do they have good GMPs in place? Are they followed? So really looking at ingredient hazards, supplier process related hazards, and supplier facility related hazards. And this training does a great job of coaching you through that. There's a lot of exercises so that you can get the experience of how to look at that, because I think this is a big challenge for PCQIs. It is a big challenge for the food industry right now. And so this focus in the training really helps give you that experience to know how to evaluate it, to make sure you're not missing it, what resources to use, and what are you really expected to know. So a huge improvement on the training. And then I'll turn it back to Laura again.
Yeah, Cynthia, that supply chain, I think we wrestle with it, right? It is not easy to peel the onion and try to figure out, where your product's even coming from through brokers and what have you. If we go to the next slide, we've given you a couple examples here, and I think it's not, it makes sense that FDA is really wanting to elevate supply chain hazards and risk analysis, because we've seen some implications around that. And we've had tariffs that we're working with. We've got geopolitical challenges where we're having to resource elsewhere. We've got economic constraints where we're maybe looking for additional or new suppliers. There's all kinds of reasons, and the supply chain have been turned over a little bit. And honestly, it's important that we continue to do the due diligence that we need to do, and the course really provides some real great guidance around that. One example here is our prepared pasta meals that linked to Nate's Fine Foods and other brands. So we see that Listeria was the hazard, Listeria monocytogenes was the hazard in this ready-to-eat meals containing pasta. And I noted as of October 30th here, we've had 27 illnesses, 25 hospitalizations, and unfortunately 6 deaths across, again, multi-states. And so it was, very difficult in trying to tease out where, and I think this is ongoing, this investigation. But the call out here is that the hazard, which is Listeria mono, existed, but the food vehicle, this vehicle and contamination source wasn't really identified right at first. And it only through sequencing and the recall that this appeared. So even with finished ready-to-eat meals, they can hide contamination risk. And we can't make an assumption that process will achieve full safety. And so again, Listeria in cooked and packaged foods remains a serious threat. Cynthia, I know you're familiar with many implications there, and I think you know, we can't be we have to be questioning kind of what hazards are emerging and understanding when we see some of these things that what we need to do to review our own hazards and risk program. If we go to the next slide, yeah, go ahead.
And this one shows too that because you can see when these recalls start hitting multiple suppliers that it's a problem in the ingredient or the supplier's facility or processes, and then it goes out to multiple other brands and you get these widespread recalls.
Exactly. Yeah, and many of us heard about the shrimp contamination with the radioactive cesium-137, and again, this year, FDA recalled the imported frozen shrimp that came from Indonesia, a firm PT Bahari, and you know, I think the point for this example is sometimes we get lulled into the risk and focused on microbiological hazards or the chemical hazards or the physical hazards, but you did a great job early in the talk saying and radiological hazards, right? And so this is it's a call out that we make sure we don't get static in our thinking and that we have a broad approach to our hazard and risk review. And that's where we lean into this training and the hazard guide, which is so valuable. So yeah, super important, this supply chain. And that, again, we just, I think the challenge is we peel the layers on these things. You mentioned, Cynthia, that it's not only the ingredient, but it's what else they're producing, it's where they're producing, it's the process that they're producing. And so if we are challenged with only talking to a broker, we're not going to get access to a lot of that information, and we really need it. And so that's the challenge in front of us, to do that pushback and really have that interaction and the collaboration with those actual suppliers and the processors. All right, next slide.
Well, with all that emphasis on suppliers, we don't want to miss out some of the other advantages or updates to version 2 of the training. It includes a lot of other enhancements, more resources. If you all took PCQI version 1, might remember how short the resource chapter was, which was fairly disappointing because that's what people want, is resources. So PCQI version 2 has, you know, important enhancements. There's more resources available now. The training also includes more in-depth teaching examples for hazard analysis. It breaks down hazard identification and evaluation more clearly, really giving the PCQI more tools to make some of the decisions. There's updated references, more current data resources for you, including the reportable food industry and the CDC outbreak information. Another improvement is the way the material has been streamlined. The chapters have been reworked a little bit, and they really went through to make sure that any redundant sections have been reduced. The flow of the course is smoother. It really provides better support and kind of building for the development of key concepts. So it has clear explanations and improved transitions between hazard analysis, preventive controls, and verification activities, teaching that a little more clearly, making it, I think, better understood once you're done with the course there. The curriculum has expanded examples tailored for small and mid-sized producers, which was another challenge. For the smaller companies, the examples were maybe a little too comprehensive, so they've improved that, and it makes the course a little bit more accessible for those smaller companies, but definitely still applies to larger companies as well. There's an emphasis on the connection between HACCP and preventive controls. So that's a point of confusion. You know, do I need a HACCP system? Do I need a food safety plan? Do I need both? Are they the same thing? So this one goes a long way in tying HACCP and preventive controls together, so you can see how you can build one food safety plan. You don't want to manage two plans. There's not two different sets of hazards. There isn't a HACCP set of hazards and a preventive control set of hazards. So you want, one comprehensive system. So this helps deal with that overlap and teach you how to work with that overlap. It teaches HACCP principles throughout the course. It ties them in better for you. The overall teaching time has increased from 20 to 22 hours. I'm not sure if that's a selling point for you, but it does give more time for explanation. So there's a lot of information in the course. And if you remember from your PCQI, your first course, a lot of information. This has increased because there is that enhanced explanation, the enhanced exercises that go through and really help you step by step understand the process of developing that food safety plan. And then finally, it does include the addition of sesame as a major allergen, again, reflecting recent regulatory changes. So overall, I would say you're going to leave, having taught both of them, version 1 was great. A ton of work went into that course. So much work went into reevaluating that course, making these improvements, and I think just really clarifying and putting it in an order that will teach you more, and giving those enhanced explanations and the emphasis on the supply chain and how do I get that information, how do I really identify those hazards I have to identify. So all of those really make it an improved training experience. Next step, next slide. We'll look at some of the next steps and resources that you'll want to use and take as you go forward from here. Next slide. So as we look ahead, one of the most important takeaways from PCQI version 2 is really the need to review and update your food safety plan to ensure that it does meet FDA expectations. And again, as Laura mentioned, one area to evaluate is really the inclusion of emerging hazards and keeping up to date with new hazards that may be emerging for your products or ingredients. It's really essential to reassess if any of these new emerging hazards could be relevant to you based on your ingredients, processes, facility design, or suppliers. And then next, take a close look at your supply chain like we've been talking about. And look for that supply chain transparency, what's going on at your supplier, so that you do know what hazards you need to identify as supply chain hazards. Again, addressing not just the ingredients, but the processes and environments where those ingredients are produced. And then finally, make sure that your preventive controls, the controls themselves, reflect current science and best practices. So FDA expects that you're monitoring those, verifying those, taking corrective action, and really checking if your procedures and training and records are all providing that intended level of control.
So Cynthia, speaking of records, I think one of the call outs that we see is not just collecting the records and, storing them in your file cabinet or, checking them off in your computer, ready for the auditor or FDA investigator when they come, but it's really using that data, right, for continuous improvement. And that's where I think the shift can be, where we're actually taking the data, analyzing the data, and reviewing it. And here we're talking about a review maybe of a monthly cadence. You can establish whatever cadence you want, but on those key process preventative controls, right, in the records. And what is it telling us? Looking for those trends, and particularly on any deviations that occurred, any near misses, when we're seeing some decline in GMP compliance, what are we doing to take action? Cynthia, you just mentioned corrective action. And so we have to be aggressive in that and document those, and then definitely sharing that. And if we go to the next column, that cross function of sharing, I think, is so key. We know that as a new or upcoming potential PCQI professional, that you're not going to be able to do it alone. It's across teams. So QA, yes, operations, maintenance, R&D, procurement. We talked about, you know, the flux we've had in our supply chain. So really, we have to have such a great relationship with our procurement team that when they're looking at sourcing a new ingredient for a new, you know, addition to your product, or shifting from one supplier to another, then we need to be actively involved in that supplier and understanding what their food safety programs look like, what preventative controls they have, just doing the deep dive, right, and understanding. And I think too, that shared data, again, cross-functionally across your teams, really has a upskill and leveling that we can do. So if we see something in the third shift that had some issues, then we can share that corrective actions across first shift and second shift. And again, we're making improvements across the board versus just in these little silos. And those lessons learned are so important to share. And you know, I've been a part of working with some people that didn't do that, didn't actively document that and share that across. And there was the multipliers and kind of hard lessons people were having to learn over and over again throughout the organization, versus, again, sharing those best practices and improvements across our operations. So lots to be done there. And Cynthia, I think auditing and validation is super important too.
Yes, absolutely. Auditing and validating, comparing your food safety plan to the, you know, going through the new course and then reviewing your food safety plan, comparing it to the requirements that you learn about, conducting internal audits so that you know what's going on, what processes are working. Again, that data feeds right back into the data that Laura was talking about, so that you can really work on that continual improvement. Other things that you can do for resources and really, you know, looking at those new expectations, there's new FSPCA job aids or job work tools provided on their site, fillable forms, recall templates, things like that, that you can go in and use. Maybe you don't want to use those, they aren't required, but you can use them as examples. Again, compare yours to the FSPCA versions and see what you're missing. What ideas can you get? Can you improve your forms and records and data collection? Because the better information you get, the better decisions you can make. And then always leveraging other experts as needed for a fresh perspective. So maybe you get a consultant in, or maybe you get someone in from a sister facility, have someone else do internal audits that isn't used to looking at your process, and they might come in with a fresh set of eyes and bring in some fresh information for you. So really take a look at your food plan, food safety plan, compare it against the new, they aren't new requirements, but new, evolving perspectives from the FDA and evolving food safety issues, evolving expectations. Look at your current food safety plan and make sure that you're keeping up with that. So
absolutely. Hopefully that's helpful for all of you to kind of have a area of focus. Perfect time, right, for as we go into the new year to really dust off your food safety plan and documentation, and really look at how your organization is approaching food safety. And if we go to the next slide, another recommended next step is really updated training. So if you're a little daunted at some of the things that Cynthia and I have been sharing, don't be. There's training there. That new updated training really has some fantastic tools and focus and examples, and the list goes on, to really help a PCQI professional navigate these waters. Confirm your training, right? If you've sort of had a back end to this designation as a PCQI professional, and you really don't have that formal training, that would be a great idea to get that training with 2.0, because it's got all the bells and whistles with the new guidance, etc., or updated guide. And certainly consider that backup. You know, we all want to take vacation, and so that backup is super important. If we go to the next slide, you know, when you're looking at a PCQI course, there are several available in the industry. Cynthia, you mentioned looking for that certificate. Really, that's the indication that you're looking at FDA curated content and approved content. And so that's super important that you're able to achieve that certificate. And it's a great way to validate that you have that understanding of that material. The fact that it's taught by an FSPCA lead instructor. You heard thousands and thousands have taken Cynthia's, and really as a lead instructor, it's so important. Cynthia, you've taken, you know, additional training to achieve that credential, and you understand the material very well, clearly, and I think that's key. The fact that the registrar training doesn't have the virtual full day session, I think is really important. So what we're talking about here is it's asynchronous. You take the course and you control the time and how fast you want to take it, how slow you want to go through it, versus being forced to join a full day session, and sometimes that can be very overwhelming. So that gives you a lot of flexibility. Trustpilot verified, you're on a secure site. Registrar offers satisfaction guaranteed, so you don't have a challenge with that. And then the customer service is fantastic. So if we go to the next slide, for all of you, we have a 10% discount, PCQI 10, that you can apply. And I know you have your phones near you, so if you'll take a quick picture of that QR code, you can go right into the registration, be able to share that with your organization, and make a plan so that you have that clear understanding of the material, and you're taking advantage, as Cynthia said, with FDA's new or revised approach and current thinking all around this important topic. So with that, go to the next slide. I think we're going to turn into, we do have some resources. So I think we anticipated people needing additional resources. So not only does the PCQI 2.0 have some fantastic resources, here's a few more for you to explore. The Institute for Food Safety and Health, Illinois Tech, they have they are a part of the FSPCA PCQI program, and they have some really great tools that you can use. Believe it or not, you can go into FDA, this FSMA Technical Assistance Network, type in your specific question to FDA, and they'll get back to you on that. It's kind of an unknown for some people. And staying on top of the recalls, the market withdrawals, safety alerts, you can sign up for those and get updates periodically. And that's how you understand, or a good way to understand some of these evolving challenges and recalls, and where are the triggers if you have a similar product, maybe from a similar part of the world, where you might need to do a review of your own hazards and risk. And then there's all kinds of tools for horizon scanning of, you know, what are those evolving challenges for the food industry, and lots of resources for that. And Cynthia, you mentioned reaching out with consultants. There's lots of great folks out there that can do that. So with that, I think I'm going to turn it over to Dante for our Q&A.
Yes, I'm back. I am back. Slight delay there, but here I am, ready for the Q&A. Thank you, Cynthia. Thank you, Laura. Appreciate all of that expert guidance. We do have a few questions, and there's a few hundred of you still on the line. So if you have another question that you want to drop in there, we might have time for it. One of the first questions here is, and Diana asked, and she was, when you were talking earlier about sharing information and continuous training, it's very important to adhere to your food safety plan. She asked, does that mean we have to have all our vendors' food safety audits?
Not necessarily. You need to understand what's going on at your vendor, at your supplier. So and this applies not to just blanket suppliers, but any supplier that's bringing you an ingredient that could have a food safety hazard. So that kind of starts to narrow it down. Maybe you have something that doesn't have any inherent hazards, but if there is a potential for a food safety hazard that you aren't controlling at your facility, then you need to look at that supplier, and a food safety audit is one tool in your tool chest. If you have a high risk ingredient, that you're probably going to want to use that tool, and you're probably going to want to include audits. But again, it would depend on risk. So it depends on if there's a food safety hazard, what is that food safety hazard? Do you need to go to that facility to understand what's going on? Or is there some other tools you could use, like review of a food safety plan? But in the course, you'll learn that there are certain cases where a food safety audit is required. So again, a variety of tools to monitor your suppliers. For when there's more risk involved, that on-site audit is probably going to be one of the tools that you're going to want to use.
Yeah, and Dante, I would just add too that you can outsource some of that with trusted and experienced food safety professionals, particularly if it's offshore, another country. But that excuse is not enough to say we can't do it because it's in France, right? You have to find a way to address those risks.
We have a question here from South Africa. He's the importer of record for a brand based in South Africa. He's done FSVP course, but he's seen value in also getting the PCQI course. Question that he has is clarify whether a PCQI must be based in the US. A specific retailer requires a US-based PCQI, but from my understanding, that is not an FDA requirement. Is this correct?
Well, the PCQI is facility specific. So if the facility is in the US, then it would be, the PCQI would be in the US. If the facility is in, overseas or in another country, that PCQI should be there. Remember, the PCQI has to be overseeing the review of records, overseeing the validation of preventive controls, overseeing the creation of and maintenance of that food safety plan. So it should really be located in the facility. They don't necessarily have to be an employee of the facility. They can be a consultant, but they have to be there enough to be fulfilling the responsibilities of that PCQI, and that's happening on site. Now, there are companies overseas that are subject to this rule or that want to have a PCQI, and so PCQIs do exist overseas. They aren't only a US phenomenon.
Excellent, thank you. I answered this to a couple folks, but we've gotten a couple of coming in and I haven't been able to answer it fast enough. So is PCQI version 2 mandatory soon, June, I believe, or is it recommended?
Well, PCQI is recommended. I highly recommend it. A lot of people highly recommend it. Remember that the Food Safety Modernization Act is the rule. That came out of Congress in 2011. So there isn't a new part of the regulation that dictates, the rule dictates that you must be trained. The current training is version 2. The rule does not require retraining. I think so the answer is no. If you've had version 1, you do not have to follow up with version 2. It's not a strict requirement. I would say it's highly recommended to follow up with version 2 and get more current. But if you have never had version 1, then yes, version 2 is required in order to be a PCQI. Does that make sense?
And Dante, I would also add that, you know, one of the pain points we heard was keeping up with regulations, keeping up with what FDA is asking for or requiring. 2.0 is the latest version of that thinking that FDA has. We talked about there's kind of laser focused on hazards and risk, in particular supply chain, and it's because of all the things, you know, the issues that we've been seeing. And so if you're looking for a tool or resource to get up to speed with that current thinking, that's the leverage you have with the PCQI 2.0.
We have a question. Is the discount okay for 2 people? Yes, I can answer that one. Yes, that discount would be applied to the total of however many courses you purchase, which is similar. I was actually looking for a question earlier. Someone was asking that had 5 or more employees that they wanted to get the courses, and can they take it? And the answer is, I can answer this one. Yes, but if you were asking, can 5 people take the one course? No, not really, because the certificate is to the individual. So each individual has to take an individual course. I wasn't sure if you were asking, can 5 people sit and watch the course together? Technically, no. Only one person will get the certificate.
No, it's a very interactive course. So as a student, you will, you know, you'll get information through videos and things, but then there's exercises that you need to do throughout the training. So those are designed for one person. So each person has to go through the course and do those exercises to move on through the course.
Have a few more questions here, and they actually keep coming in. So one of the questions, though, is can you put that slide back up that had the QR code on there? If you can move that there, there you go. Which also actually answers one of the questions in here. Is there a PCQI for animal food course? Yes, there is. But so that's back up there for anyone who wants that. Can a PCQI train someone from the facility on FSMA, preventive controls for human food, and be considered as an alternate PCQI?
You know, not really. They really need, again, they need to go through something that's the standardized curriculum or equivalent to the standardized curriculum. And that would be very difficult to reproduce. So that would be unlikely to meet the requirement. And the standardized curriculum is taught by a lead instructor that's been approved by FSPCA. So if you want an additional PCQI, they should go through the PCQI, the official PCQI training.
I think this might be a follow-up to an earlier question. In lieu of food safety audit, can you accept their third-party audit certificate?
Again, that depends on the risk. You will set up your particular method for verifying what's going on at a supplier facility, and it will depend on that particular ingredient that they're supplying and the supplier itself and the level of risk. So that is one tool in the toolbox for approving, monitoring suppliers. But you will need to evaluate the risk and the supplier, and you'll need to consider the ingredient, the supplier's facility, and the supplier's processes to come up with the right combination for knowing that you are have the right preventive controls, or they have the right preventive controls in place.
And just like any third-party vendor, you would need to evaluate the competency of that third-party auditor, right, to make sure that they can achieve the results you're looking for, have the competencies.
Great. Well, a few people have asked, will the slides be shared? We will definitely send the recording. I'll have to check on the slides, but I will definitely check on that. I did have a question. Someone said they would like to screenshot the benefits of PCQI training slide. If we could back up to, I think it was slide 9. Sherry, if you're still on.
It's so gratifying to know that some of these slides are helpful.
So yeah, if we could, there's a slide. Here's one, benefits of PCQI version 2 training. I'll give you 5 seconds to screenshot that, and then we can go back one more slide of benefits of PCQI training. I think, I don't know, maybe the point was to try to get approval to get PCQI training, and here's
Sure.
maybe.
Yep.
Great. And this is the first time of all the webinars I've ever hosted where we backtrack through slides. Isn't that awesome? I think we got to just about all the questions. There's a handful more in here that seemed very similar to other questions that already got answered. So unless somebody pops one in here, and we're actually at the hour anyway, I think, wait, okay, here we go. Would a CGMP certificate, Food Defense Coordinator cert, HAZWOPER cert, and 10 years of developing HACCPs and HARPCs qualify someone as a PCQI?
Well, that would depend if they have understand. Remember that this is a food safety plan. It's FDA requirement. So my question would be, you know, are you confident that that person and that person's experience is with this type of food safety plan and meeting, they understand what requirements they have to meet in that plan. So again, the experience is based on, is that experience equivalent to the standardized curriculum and the information in the standardized curriculum? So are they familiar with this specific program?
Great. Another question just came in. One of our employees wants to take another one I can answer. One of our employees wants, it's fun when I can. One of our employees wants to take a course of PCQI. Does he need to take it PCQI version 1 first, then version 2.0, or is it enough to take version 2.0? There's no need to take version 1.0. Just go right to 2.0. It's not a series. This is replacing 1.0.
1.0 doesn't exist anymore. Actually, it's been taken out.
Yeah. So I would suggest that if you are going to find a course, make sure it does say 2.0. I mean, if it was 1.0, it probably wouldn't say anything because there was no other version at the time, right? I don't know. I might be wrong there, but just make sure it is 2.0 because it might be something old out there, which actually is another. We actually got a couple questions on this, and they got buried. A couple questions on, is there any in-person PCQI 2.0 training? Do you want to speak to that?
Yeah, there's 3 different formats that are offered. So there's in-person classroom training, 22 hours, and there's multiple lead instructors around the world that can teach that course. So you can look on the FSPCA website for the courses that are offered because all the official courses are registered with FSPCA. There's also online kind of virtual courses, so where you're actually watching a teacher teach it for, again, the 3 days online, the 22 hours online, live on a schedule. And then there's the asynchronous, which is what we offer, where it's completely, there's no instructor. The teaching is all built into the training. So that's why it's very interactive. You're working with the material. That's the part where you're getting the information and you're working with the material. And I guess there's actually a fourth. There's kind of a combo class that FSPCA offers where you take some of it online and then you do the exercises during a real virtual 8-hour session. So there's a few different options that you can take. All the official courses are listed on the FSPCA site. We think the asynchronous is a very convenient way to do it. You can take it anywhere in the world. You can take your time, so you could do a chapter tonight, a chapter tomorrow, or however it works for you instead of that scheduled time. And because it's very interactive, it's very effective. You're learning it. You're not sitting in a group doing group exercises where someone else is kind of really leading the exercise and doing all the work. Or even, confusing you. But so this one, we've all done group projects. We know how that goes. But this, You're actually in there. You're working through it at your own time and pace, and we make sure that you understand things all the way through the training in order to pass the course.
And I'll piggyback on that. The ability to, I mean, asynchronous is just a fancy word for the ability to take at your own pace, and you can start and stop and come back. But you mentioned, you kind of said it like there's no instructor. I'd say, I mean, there's an FSPCA lead instructor who developed the curriculum, and it was you in our
Yes.
case.
And then we have our support, our chat too. So that's there for questions and things. So yes, definitely, it is a course given by a lead instructor through the development of all the interactive pieces and exercises and the information in the course.
And I know our version, the Registrar Corp version, which those QR codes we're linking to if you're interested in them, but they also include like food safety plan templates that you get to download, and workbook to work with, and some of the exercises and stuff like that.
Right. It has all the official FSPCA materials because it is the FSPCA curriculum and course. So yes, you get I believe it's a 500-page manual, but part of it is the learning part, and part of it is great resources, examples, templates, and things like that.
We got a question. Is your training recognized by the HACCP Alliance?
No, because it's not technically a HACCP course. If you want that, we do offer a HACCP course that is recognized by HACCP Alliance. But this, again, even though they're similar, built on similar principles, because this is FDA and it's regulatory, the FDA has specific regulatory requirements that they require that are different than just your HACCP system. And I saw another question as I was scrolling through. We haven't talked about GFSI yet either. And someone asked, why would you continue with GFSI certification if you've got this type of food safety plan in place? And again, they're two different things. GFSI is a market-driven standard. It doesn't necessarily address the FDA requirements. It addresses worldwide, what food safety requirements, these internationally agreed upon food safety requirements for a food safety system. It's actually more inclusive than the food safety plan. The food safety plan addresses the hazards, the hazard analysis, your controls, and managing the system and your GMPs. GFSI includes much more management review, internal audits, a lot of system elements that aren't included. So if you have a customer that's asking for a GFSI certification, just meeting the FSMA requirements is not going to be equivalent. So many people have both. And GFSI actually offers some addendums to their audits where they will actually audit the FSMA portion. But again, market driven for GFSI, required by clients, FDA, comply or go to prison. So
regulatory non-compliance. Yeah.
So just to go back to that, the HACCP Alliance thing, yes. So the PCQI training that we're talking about is FSPCA aligned, which is the gold standard in PCQI training. But we do offer, Registrar does have HACCP certification training, which is aligned with International HACCP Alliance, the gold standard there. And for what it's worth, you can actually bundle both of those courses together and get a bigger discount. And you could use your 10% discount today and get the bundle discount and the 10% discount. We let you double down. I think that's all the questions. Every time I keep saying that, another one kept popping up. And thank you, because I missed that other one on GFSI. I don't know, I was scrolling through here and missed it. Saw it earlier and then got buried. So that's it. I think everyone, thank you so much. Thank you for attending. There's still a heck of a lot of you on. So the Q&A was very helpful and informative. So Cynthia, Laura, thanks again. And thanks again to all of you out there. We appreciate it. And yes, you'll get a follow-up here with a survey that we hope you will take, because it helps us understand if we're doing a good job and help us do better. And we'll follow up with the recording of the webinar, and see you next time.
Thank you.
Bye, everybody. Good luck.